Whenever you're in Quezon Province, make sure you drop by and challenge yourself to bike up the old zigzag road. It's a test of will, endurance, and really the determination to make it on top. You have to pass the 3 hairpin turns and also survive probably the heat, or right now we're in the middle of a typhoon or a super typhoon that's on its way. So what brings me to Quezon is that I'm visiting a student, Mr. Rome Asegurado, head roaster of the Bliss roasting lab. And he is one of my students in our Sensory Spark class that we offer at the Institute for Coffee Excellence. And I'm here to visit and watch him roast and use his sensory skills to make really delicious coffees.
Hi, my name is Rome and I am a coffee guide. Coffee guide from Lucena City, Quezon Province. It's a small town. I'm 24 years old and I'm currently running our family business here in Lucena City. It's a Dwelling Bliss bed and breakfast and cafe. So I started working here roughly around 3 years now, more or less. Dwelling Bliss, it started back in 2015. It was just an idea before that was being brought about lang with our family discussions for so long. Since me and my sister moved out of Lucena City to attend college, university, the house has been empty for like so long, and my parents were thinking of a better way to, utilize the house instead of it being empty all the time. So back in 2015, we decided to convert it into a B&B and a cafe. And that's where it all started. And that's actually also the start of my coffee journey, because back then I wasn't really into all of that. I'm actually an IT graduate. So some people always ask me how come I ended up in this industry and I should have been doing programming or like system solutions, etc. Before, I wasn't really a big fan of coffee and drink much. I didn't know what it was, like the way it is, I know it now. When we started Dwelling Bliss, my mom started learning a lot of things. And since we were opening a cafe, she had to learn stuff about coffee. And back then I had free time to, of course, bring her to the classes she goes to and pick her up, and I would stay there. And during that time, I still wasn't really paying much attention to what was going on. Even though my mom would talk about how interesting the classes were and everything, I was still focused on other things, still in university and stuff. But summer of 2017, that's when it all started. My mom just threw it out of nowhere, like, "Hey son, why don't you attend a barista class for just a week? Just try it out. We'll pay for it. Let's see if you enjoy it." I'm like, During that time, actually, I was just doing freelance work, still figuring things out, fresh grad stuff, Then, okay, yeah, sure, why not? So I tried it. And then, actually, the first day of class, and the instructor was just giving history about coffee, how it came to be, and the things you can do with it. I was blown away, actually, with the complexity of this drink that I thought was just something to wake people up. And since then, for like session after session of that class, I slowly fell in love with the craft and everything, and how much time and effort people actually put into making these drinks, etc. So yeah, I found it very interesting. Alright, so how did I get into roasting? I guess there were multiple factors that came into play, but since learning how to be a barista and everything, and slowly learning the craft, understanding how each factor contributes to whatever flavor experience you get from the cup. There's a certain point of being a barista where you reach that level of curiosity, like what else is out there. And for me, I think it was an obvious track to take to seek something new. After tasting it, I like visiting different cafes and everything. I remember when we visited Japan and that experience with Coffee Mamea, where they were bringing in different coffees from different roasters from around the world, just goes to show that even if it's the same coffee that they're roasting, depending on whoever was working on that coffee, they can bring us something completely different. And to me, that was a whole new world that I could get into, aside from just being a barista. So it made sense in multiple aspects. And I think it was an obvious thing for me to take as a next step in this coffee journey that I'm taking. When I got into roasting for the first time, the first thing that I struggled with was multitasking. You really have to consider your workflow as a roaster to be able to do everything properly. Because it's like, so there's like a time constraint in a way once you heat the drum and have everything prepared. And of course, you want also your data to be consistent and make sure that it's logging in the computer and everything. So, given this much control with the machine that I had, plus also zero experience with messing around with all these buttons, starting off was very overwhelming. There's a lot of things to press, you have to time it correctly, and you have to watch what's going on the screen, on the coffee, on the machine. So that was the first challenge for me. And then figuring out the workflow, what's efficient, what works, and how do I minimize whenever I'm trying something new. A lot of people ask me, since whenever they find out I'm an IT graduate, so why am I doing all of this instead of focusing on computers, etc. Well, I think one of the key things that I learned as an IT graduate was thinking of solutions to problems. And with roasting, you're faced with a lot of problems, given the amount of information that you have in terms of what coffee you're using, what machine you have, and all of these variables that you have to control. There's always a new challenge that presents itself with the changing weather conditions, with of course coffee being something organic that changes over time, and also figuring out how to make sense of all the data that you're putting into the computer. So the nerdy side of it, I enjoy a lot, and I remember as an IT student, we were also given opportunities to think of solutions to problems for different companies, streamlining their workflow, etc. So it's kind of similar in a way. The technicalities plus the practical side of it, where you have to figure out how to make sense of all of that data and putting it together into something that's in a way tangible, like all of these numbers, temperatures, and variables, they all mean nothing to some people, but it means something else whenever you translate it into something flavorful with the coffee. So yeah, I think that helped me digest easier whatever was going on with the roasting. The definition of roasting is kind of similar to the concept of alchemy, where you turn a very basic metal like this in lead into gold. It's a similar concept in a way, where you're turning this green bean into gold by transforming it into this raw vegetal flavored coffee into something that explodes with flavor and experience that people will find memorable, because I've had those experiences. So given that experience that I've had with a lot of cafes that serve good coffee, that's what being at the other side of it is what excites me a lot. I think it's a very rewarding thing for a roaster to be able to bring out such unique flavors that nobody else has ever brought out from that particular coffee. So yeah, it's very exhilarating. Even though there is some challenges along the way, the rewards are very rewarding. There's a post that says never settle, so it's actually one of my personal mantras. Something that I live by since I was a little younger. My dad would always teach me to never settle. It's always one of his teachings. Always strive to do better all the time. And for me, it helped me motivate myself to pursuing whatever I'm interested in. And I think it's a nice thing to see every day, never settle. Especially for this type of craft. Sometimes roasters would get into this trap where this tastes good and everything. But then certain conditions happen and sometimes inconsistency will arise. So you shouldn't always be complacent or something for whatever it is that you get. Because as technology improves and a lot of things evolve, things will catch up and things will change. For you to be relevant in the long run, I really think that never settle for whatever is going on with you and always strive to do better at what you're doing all the time. So what's my support system? Well, it's really my immediate family. They always tell me that the coffees that I make are really great, and I've heard them coffee in the morning. They're really thankful that I'm really sinking my teeth into this and stuff like that. So that really helps me going. But really, as any person who's focused on any type of craft, your biggest critic will always be yourself. And it's my fear, but it's also my motivation. Maybe it's hard to grasp for some people, but at times I use that as something to drive myself to keep moving forward, like visualizing what I can be in the future. I imagine Quezon growing this amazing coffee community, not just the community that I see like in NCR, like in other provinces where a lot of home brewers around there. That's what I want. And whenever I visualize that in my head, where I have this local community really loves coffee for the way it is, and seeing that goes for the fruits of your labor because we started it here and first from there, it gives me goosebumps actually. So never settle. So it doesn't end with what output I get from my roast. Of course, like never settle. Like maybe this will taste like this, and then I try something new and maybe it can taste better. That kind of mindset. It also applies, I think, to learning the craft because science is related very much to roasting, and we all know that each year there's always something new with science and technology and all that. Latest phones, latest gadgets. The same with roasting. There'll always be this latest fancy machine that can do this, or if you follow other coffee news, there's always this new variety of coffee that's coming out. So with the ever-evolving world, changing climate, changing conditions, emerging technologies, and all of that, there's always changes happening, and never settling for what you're learning now will allow you to really sustain yourself in the long run, to be able to keep doing and actually enjoying what you love is actually knowing the fact that whatever you're learning right now is not going to be safe in the future. That type of unknown and uncertainty is really what brings excitement to the craft. And I think never settle is a fitting quote to live by. Support. I think my number one supporters will always be my family, my immediate family, and my girlfriend, of course. Hey, if you're watching. Anyway, I know it's super cheesy. That sucks, man.